So we covered one topic, which is Volvo. We want to move to another topic, which is somewhat aligned and equally interesting. Anyone not heard this phrase? Can someone tell me what this phrase is? Who said it? When? Why? You've not heard it? Okay, good. Kaveri man is a good friend, which is good. Sorry, Carlos. See? I'm going to look for this here. So these words were uttered by a famous guy, and it's old hat. Everyone knows, for the most part, who said it and why. I'm going to give you a little more context on the nature of scientific thought in the modern world, and how Upanishads and the Gita, especially the Gita, has had a deep impact on the way the world is today. The reason the United States is doing so well is because we nuked a country. We sent 2 bombs down on Japan, and the scientists behind it did not necessarily have an opinion, and I'll talk about it in a second. But they made the bomb that gave America the power to finish the World War, and which gave so many years of lasting peace, and of course mutually assured destruction. So I'm going to play this verse, then we'll get into it.
कालोऽस्मि लोकक्षयकृत् प्रवृद्धो लोकान् समाहर्तुमिह प्रवृत्तः ऋते विद्वान् न भविष्यन्ति सर्वे येव स्थिताः प्रत्यनीकेषु योधाः.
Lord Krishna replied to Arjuna, I have shown myself to thee as the destroyer who lays waste the world and whose purpose is destruction in spite of efforts of what all is it saying here? I'm going to read the whole thing. Okay. All these warriors gathered here for battle shall not escape death. So the point that Krishna is making in this particular shlok is that I'm asking you to do what needs to be done. You're afraid that you're thinking, hey, I'm going to kill my uncle, my teacher, my cousin, my friend, whatever. But I am... Yeah. And so that's what he says in the next one, which is, my friend, just be an agent. What he's saying next is,
Tasmat tvamuttishta yasho labhasva.
Therefore rise and
Jitva shatrun bhungshvarajyam samruddham. Mayaivaite nihataha purvameva. Nimittamatram bhavasavyasavachin.
And so do what you need to do and attain victory and go lead a kingdom and be victorious, knowing that you're only a medium for what is already going to happen. So this is what Krishna says to him and encourages him to act. And act he did. Who did? J. Robert Oppenheimer. Richard Feynman is a very famous physicist. Richard Feynman was an underling under Oppenheimer. So much of an underling that he makes a note in his book that I once went to this place and Oppenheimer asked if my wife's treatment was going fine, and I thought, wait, such a great man knows about my wife's tuberculosis. So that's Oppenheimer for you. He was the head of the Manhattan Project, whose job was to build the atomic bomb for the United States before Hitler builds his bomb, because only one can have it, and he did. Oppenheimer builds the atomic bomb, and the rest is history. But the father of the atomic bomb had a lot of connection to the Gita. You see, this is 1945. 20 years prior, he was in Berkeley. And in Berkeley, he came into this professor who was a Sanskrit teacher, and he was handed a copy of the Gita, which he found interesting in English. And then he said, I must learn it in the Sanskrit. So he learns a little bit of Sanskrit and reads the Gita for himself. And it influences him directly. As a physicist, as a man of science, he is deeply influenced by the Gita. And it informs how he approaches his life and his work. And so in everything leading up to the building of the atomic bomb, the exhortations that he has for his fellow scientists, the call to action, despite scientists were not warmongers, they were pacifists. Even he was a pacifist. But yet, despite being a pacifist, he built the bomb. Why does he build the bomb? Which he knows is going to unleash mayhem, death all around. Why does he do it? The question he asks of himself, what is my dharma? What is the dharma of a scientist? It is not to wage war, surely. It is not to bomb poor innocent civilians in Japan, surely. But is his dharma to build the best atomic bomb? And he concludes unambiguously and without any hesitation that yes, that is my dharma. Because as scientists, he says, we must say an unalterable yes. Is it good to give the world increased power? And it is the scientist's job to do that. That is his dharma. Now what somebody else who presses the button or drops the bomb does is beyond the scope of this test. This test is, can I build a bomb? And my duty is to build a bomb and I must do it. There is no doubt. Unintended consequences are an interesting, we were talking about Bahushatha earlier before the break. Worrying about the consequences of one's actions is futile. That's what he concluded, Oppenheimer did. It reminds me of another very interesting meme I came across on the internet. And that was as follows. So Batman, everyone familiar with Batman? Do you think Batman earns some punya for saving lives? Suppose he earns 1 unit of punya for every life he saves. He saved n lives, presumably. How much punya does he have mathematically? N units of punya. Good? Okay. Now, there's a guy who killed Batman's parents, which made Batman as bitter and angry as he is. And he resolves to save the world and save lives. So how much punya do you think the Batman's parents' killers accrue? Only n-2. It's all good, right? You think? And that's the problem with counting the consequences of one's actions. You can only count the consequences of your immediate action because your immediate action is what you're doing. What happens after that, you don't know. You can't control, and you should not count into your calculus. Just do your action and let everything else take care of itself. And so, Oppenheimer, knowing that somebody might use it as a bomb, still says, unacceptable as that is to me as a pacifist, I must still build a bomb. Because all I know is my job, my dharma, is to bring the most power that man can get. And so he builds a bomb. Not just that. Previously, when he was reading the Gita, he found his calling very directly in these 2 words. Dharma over karma, duty over the fruits of action. He said, I must give up the fruits of action and focus solely on my duties. That is directly lifted from the Gita. There is no other way to think about it. And so the father of the atomic bomb, the most scientific man that you can think of, is deeply influenced in his actions, not just by the intellectual reading of the Gita, but in his actions, he is deeply influenced by the Gita. And that's the interesting thing about the Gita. We looked at philosophers, Western philosophers, modern Western philosophers. We looked at poets, we looked at political thought leaders, we looked at a scientist, we looked at many other scientists. The Vedantic system holds a lot of appeal, despite being Dharma in the religion context, and being associated or identified with Hindu Dharma and the Hindu religion. These are men of science, men of philosophy, men of action, and they're deeply influenced by the Gita. Because the Gita isn't about the Hindu religion. The Hindu religion comes from these set of thoughts. And those set of thoughts are universal thoughts that people, even from outside the context, have learned and understood and applied deeply. And they have had a deep impact on the shape of the world today. And so, very famous interview. Let me see if I can get the audio here. Can I get the audio here? Okay. Let me see if I can get the YouTube of his audio while I do this. So, the reason we talk about this here in the context of the CHT program. Oh, right. Sorry. The reason we talk about this in the context of the CHT program is that you might feel otherwise hesitant in using a dharmic text. Oh, this is religious. We can't use it. This is a secular audience. But the point is, these are not religious people. Men of science, men of philosophy, men of action, political leaders, all deeply influenced by the Gita. And so feel free to use the Gita in your coaching. Yes.
The world would not be the same.
He did not at all have regrets. Because he says, my dharma is this. It is the politician's dharma to decide whether to bomb or not. And if they decide, that is their problem. They carry the guilt. I do not carry the guilt. My job was to build the bomb, and by God, I built the bomb. That's his thing. Now here's his quote.
But he knows
Because the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
That's
very powerful.
very powerful.
Yeah, but he knows the consequences. He knows the consequences. Right?
But many branched.
Many he did the.
Right.
I don't know whether he knew the consequences. That was a possibility. That was a possibility. But